What's up, everybody on Instagram and YouTube Live? It's Dan from Atlas Lens Code. Today we've got Oksana joining me on camera.
Hello.
Thank you so much. We have our
Happy to be here.
fantastic producing crew. We've got DeCell running the YouTube live stream from the computer. We've got Matt Sala operating a Canon C70 with a Mercury Series 42 millimeter, and we have Obi heading up the Instagram live stream. Thanks so much. Hope everybody's having a lovely Tuesday out there, or if you're in Asia, Wednesday night or Wednesday morning, Tuesday night. It's nighttime. So how's it going?
Pretty great. I'm excited to be here today. I know you have a very exciting topic to talk about. Um,
Interesting and prescient topic, right? We
yes,
we get questions about this a lot, don't we?
yes, yes.
So the thing we're going to talk about today is how do you use an anamorphic lens like the Atlas Mercury series or the Orion series on a mirrorless camera where perhaps there's no anamorphic D-squeeze mode. And I imagine you probably get questions every week in your inbox that are like, hey,
Yeah.
I've got something like a Canon C70 like we're using now, which actually has a couple anamorphic D-squeeze modes, right? So
Mm.
they've got a 2 times D-squeeze and they have a 1.33 D-squeeze, but they lack a 1.5 D-squeeze like what we have for a Mercury lens.
Okay. Mhm.
So that's of course important and prescient with the forthcoming release of the Mercury lenses to the public. Or maybe you're using something like a Sony FX3. Um, Maybe you've got like a Canon R5C, and it's so hard for the camera manufacturers to keep up with the different anamorphic modes for different anamorphic lenses, because there's different ratios out there and there's always new things popping up. Big shout out Panasonic. I'd say you're one of the manufacturers that has the most anamorphic D-squeeze modes in your cameras. Cameras like the S5 II, the GH6, so many different modes in there, the BS1H, the S1H, the S5. Um, Panasonic really does a great job of supporting
Mhm.
the community with different anamorphic D-squeeze modes built in. But let's focus on the C70 today because that's what we're looking through.
Yeah.
Um, so, people like Will Kia used the C70 for his debut film with an Atlas Mercury series back in September.
Mhm.
And people out there might be wondering, well, there's no 1.5 D squeeze. So, like, what would he do in order to monitor on set? And there's two things you can do. You can either go rogue and have no D squeeze at all and just look at things squished in. Everybody looks a little skinny. Or you could get a really nice external monitor, something like Atomos. All of the Ninja and associated Shogun recorders have D squeeze, and they also give you capabilities like recording ProRes, which
Mhm.
is really handy for smaller mirrorless cameras. But then you also have the benefit of having different D-squeeze modes. Or you could use something like a fantastic small HD monitor. Big shout out to small
Yeah.
HD. Um, Really cutting edge. Here we are like 14, 15 years into the life cycle of when small HD first came out. And I can remember those early days still using what were like extremely cutting edge concepts for independent filmmaking at the time,
Mhm.
where the Canon 5D and the Nikon D90 were the new independent tools of choice, where you're able to record with a larger sensor, which was something totally unprecedented for the independent market. And we'd be like, well, we have these great cameras with great sensors, but how do we see the picture? And Small HD was one of the first companies to introduce a very affordable onboard field monitor. And here they are continuing to innovate with other fantastic tools, like Ed Lockman's EL Zone that they've implemented, which is like a false color tool for judging exposure when you're in adverse conditions on set. So you can very quickly get an idea of what your exposure range is in the signal. But the other fantastic thing about the Small HD monitors is a plethora of anamorphic D-squeeze modes. So
Mhm.
they've really
Mhm.
gone above and beyond in terms of having a variety of standard anamorphic ratios for D-squeeze, as well as things like zero point 0.5 D-squeeze. So if you're going to do something like we call Atlas scope, where you rotate
Yeah.
your camera body 90 degrees, and then you need to do a half D-squeeze with an Orion or a 0.67 D-squeeze if you're using a Mercury. Um, they have the ability to set custom D-squeeze ratios. So shout out Small HD. Thank you for always creating tools that help the community. and that's super prescient for what we're talking about today. So many of you out there might be using something like a Sony FX3, like Oksana had said, something like a Canon C70, or a Fuji X-H2S, which is also a really awesome camera.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, Very cool that it has like a 3x2 recording mode, which is useful for anamorphic and just getting a generally more square recording format
Mm-hmm.
if you're using a spherical lens. So big shout out to Fujifilm also. And also shout out to Sigma, who have recently introduced anamorphic D-squeeze into their FP line of cameras. Those are
That's right.
really fantastic. You're going to be blown away by how small that camera is. If you haven't seen it, it's like, okay, we've got a little thing riding on the back of the lens now, right? It's like a little bit bigger than a GoPro, but just super capable
Yeah.
and makes a fantastic director's viewfinder. And with the addition of anamorphic D-squeeze modes for preview on set, that makes a super fantastic tool. So, if you're just joining us, thanks for popping in. Our topic today is anamorphic on cameras that don't necessarily have the most advanced anamorphic D-squeeze modes in camera. So a lot of questions that we get are like, I've got a Sony FX3, I've got a Canon C70. How would I use something like an Orion series or a Mercury series lens and get the most out of the picture? So even if
Yeah.
your recording modes in those cameras are constrained to a 16 by 9 or DCI 189 recording format, you can still record your anamorphic picture and then de-squeeze in post. But when you're on set and running around, you're going to need a workflow that lets the director see what you're seeing, lets you see the best of what you're seeing and compose the way that you expect it to be.
Mm-hmm.
When you say that's important?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm really glad that you we want to talk about it today.
Yeah. And another big
Mm-hmm.
question we get is like, what is the best PL mount adapter for my mirrorless camera? So a lot of people write in and ask, why did you choose to make the Mercury series lenses only PL? There's two reasons. One is that we wanted something that would be both compatible for film cameras as well as the highest end level of motion picture production, whether you're using something like an Alexa Mini LF or Alexa 35 or a Sony Venice. Um, PL mount is typically what we use at the top level of production when we have the opportunity because it's the most robust and rigid mount, with LPL being sort of a variation of PL in a way, the way that it locks in. But why don't you offer EF mounts? And there's two reasons. The EF mount is just not compatible with the optical layout that we
Mm-hmm.
have in the Mercury. It just wouldn't work. So we didn't want to disappoint people by saying, okay, we're going to make an EF mount, but it's only going to work with half of the EF mount cameras out there. So we focused on really honing in on one professional grade mount. And then if you're working with smaller cameras that don't have a PL native mount, there are a fantastic array of mirrorless camera to PL mount adapters out there. And a huge shout out to Red Digital, who just introduced their own native PL mount with the Komodo camera and with the Raptor camera. So that's a really robust sort of native Red design mount that allows you to use PL lenses without resorting to a third-party solution that maybe you have to adjust the back focus. So huge shout out to Eric Hall. Last week he was on the stream with us, and we were
Yeah.
talking about the DENS FDC system and how you might set your back focus when you're using one of those
Big
adapters,
one.
because there are variances not only in the camera but in the mount adapters themselves, and you're going to want to
Yeah.
use a tool like that. So that's another thing that we do here, right? Is at Atlas, as a service to the community, we give people access to a DENS FDC if you don't own one, or if your local rental house doesn't own one. Come on down to our headquarters in Glendale, bring your camera in, and we will help you set the back focus on your camera with
Yeah.
your adapter.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
It's really important. And we went into that last week. You could still see the stream on the YouTube stream section. If you go to like previous live videos, you could check that out. But reach out to us if you need a demonstration of how that works, or if you need support. We're always here for you. And we do in-person demonstrations every Wednesday here. So I'm going to try to open it up to questions from people on Instagram Live and people on the YouTube Live. If you have questions about mirrorless cameras working with anamorphic lenses, we're happy to field some of those questions. And otherwise, we will just play around with flares, and maybe
Yeah.
Oksana has some ideas or suggestions too.
And yeah, the reason we just want to talk about this, and we have a lot of people reaching out asking, how can I use anamorphic lenses? They are so beautiful, and I don't know how to use them on my mirrorless camera. So it's such a thanks for explaining. And again, the camera we're currently using. Can you talk a little bit more on the camera and the mount? Are we?
I'm glad you bring it up, Oksana. That's a good point. So, the camera that we're using right now is a C70, and this is a really fantastic camera, not only for documentary style filmmaking, where you want to be able to sort of jump out of a van, let's say, or you're out in the field running around and you need ND filters internal to the camera so you can change your ND value on the fly. That's a huge asset that the C70 has. It has a variety of onboard recording modes that give you longer run times for every memory card that you have, and it's a Super
Mhm.
35 sensor. It has the great Canon color science. It has the robust weather sealing that we're used to with Canon cameras.
Wow.
So
Cool.
it's really interesting because it's sort of a hybrid of a mirrorless stills type camera, but really sort of drilled down in the specifications and usability for quick filmmaking where you might have to work quickly and in a lightweight sort of package.
Sad. Mhm.
And having that mirrorless mount, I know a lot of people are using autofocus lenses for more and more documentary style filmmaking or where you need to move quickly. And so having the great Canon autofocus in such a light package with the built-in ND filters really makes it a versatile tool. And then when you're trying to make something that's like more of a cinematic documentary, I can't recommend using the C70 enough with anamorphic lenses like ours because
Totally.
it'll just add extra flavor. As we know, one of the key draws for using lenses like the Atlas Orion series or the Atlas Mercury series is not only the mechanically robust design, but really the aesthetic that they help bring into image quality. So our lenses have really beautiful personality, and it allows you to
Yeah.
be expressive, create widescreen or square format if you rotate the camera body with the Atlas scope premise. Um, to create different format deliveries as well as
Mhm.
like very unique attributes like the oval bokeh, the streak flares, as Oksana is demonstrating with a flashlight going right into the lens right now, and lovely fall off and overall beautiful color and draw rendition. So
Cool.
it's a lot of talking. It's been a very interesting and exciting week. We went to the ASC Awards on Sunday. Um, what a tremendous and exciting experience to be right there, hearing the passion of filmmakers come forth and seeing the fantastic work that, sometimes we don't always remember what brought us here. We're so in the mix. But to go and be among some of the most amazing cinematographers in the world, whether they're just starting in their career or whether they've been doing it for 50 plus years, um, sort of seeing the community come together around the craft and around the people was really an amazing treat. Really quickly, if anyone has questions about using your cameras with uh, anamorphic lenses like the Orion series or the Mercury series, let us know in the comments. We're going to be happy to help answer those questions while we're on this live. And if not, we're going to wrap it up pretty soon and we'll see you next week, or we'll see you hopefully in person tomorrow in Glendale, California.
Yeah.
All right, question. So I saw in the Mercury Series test video that the tester mentioned that the 42 millimeter produces a square flare in direct light. Is this true for every 42 millimeter, or is this a special case?
That's a fantastic question. So it really depends on not only the light that's being used to create the flare. If it's a point source coming off of a mirror of a car driving down the street, your flare is going to be different than if you're pointing a mag light right into the lens, for instance. So it really depends on the environment, the light source, and your camera. But if you want to email us with a screenshot of the particular flare that's concerning you, let us know and we'll do our best to answer that. But, to be specific, all the lenses that we're showing right now are pretty much close to shipping lenses. They're all prototypes. So another big question we get is, are Mercury series lenses shipping to customers yet?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, no.
That's it.
But we have
That's
a
it.
large quantity, well, not large, we have a good quantity of prototype lenses that we're using to create content and do a lot of final testing around. And the best way I would put it is that the flare characteristic of the Mercury series is a unique personality trait that is definitely different than the Orion series and definitely different than lenses that have come before and lenses that will come after. So if you're someone that's worried about the flare, let us know. We'd be happy to let you try the lenses hands-on either with us or set up a demo locally in your area. And we think you're going to be pleasantly surprised.
Will there be a B series in the near future?
So the way that we've described the group of Mercury lenses, I'm assuming that the person asking is referring to will there be a second grouping of Mercury series lenses? When we introduced the Orion series, we gave the first three lenses that we shipped a name and called it the A set. Um, and I think that that created a lot of confusion for people in the world because the next question that we got is, what is the difference between an Orion A set and an Orion B set? They're the same family of lenses. So it's the Orion series. And then there's what we call like an A grouping and a B grouping. And the A set is a 40, 65, and 100. And the B set is a 32, 50, and 80. And we're not calling the Mercury series lens family by an A set and a B set just to help alleviate some of the confusion around the different groupings. But the best way I would put it is the Mercury series group 1 consists of the 36 millimeter, the 42 millimeter, and the 72 millimeter, and those are all T2.2 full frame lenses. The next grouping, or group 2 of Mercury series family, is the 54 millimeter, the 95 millimeter, and the 138 millimeter. And those are going to be debuting as working prototypes a little bit later this year. And once we start showing prototypes that we're happy with, we're going to start taking pre-order reservations on those lenses as well. But until we're showing prototypes, we don't want people to be putting in pre-orders because we always like to basically have something that we show that represents the closest that we can to a true product that you're going to get. And that way there's a really good alignment of expectations, what things are uh, as we set out on this mission compared to what you're going to get when you put in a pre-order. So hopefully that makes sense. And yeah, those first 6 lenses in the Mercury series family are 36, 42, 72. The second grouping is 54, 95, and 138. So hopefully that answers that question.
For the Orion series, which brand of filter to protect the lens you recommend?
So for protecting an Orion series lens, a lot of people will use a matte box with a 134 millimeter. I'm sorry, I'm thinking of a different lens. I'm thinking of the 25 and the 21, which use a bigger clamp-on diameter. But if you're using a 32 through 100 Orion, it's a 114 millimeter outer diameter. So a lot of people are using a variety of clip-on matte boxes, whether it's something from Airy, Bright Tangerine, Tilta, Polar Pro. There's so many great matte box choices out there that have a 114 millimeter clamp back or a rod support, and then they'll use a clear filter that they like. We're huge fans of Tiffin. A lot of people also use Schneider. People will use Lindsay Optics. There's a bunch of great filters out there, but we're sort of brand agnostic when it comes to filters. We don't make our own filters, but if you're looking for something that threads in, the 40 millimeter through 100 millimeter Orion actually have 105 millimeter coarse thread on for the front. We don't necessarily advise that you use that, but we offer it as an option for people that do want screw-in filters. And so there are options that are 105 millimeter coarse thread in from Tiffin, and there may be other ones out there that you can find as well. But 105 millimeter is the thread size.
Frame coverage of the Mercury series.
So the Mercury series lenses are designed to cover LF format sensors, LF being a premise in name created around the Ariflex standard, which is about a 37 millimeter by 25 millimeter format. Traditional 135 stills format is about 36 millimeter by 25 millimeter, or 24 millimeter, sorry, 36 by 24, 3:2 aspect ratio. The Mercury series will cover more than 36 by 24, and they will actually technically cover more than 37 by 25. We have people who've successfully tested them with cameras like the Fujifilm GFX 100S, which is a 44 millimeter by 33 millimeter sensor, and you're going to get some dark corners and some fall off and some vignetting when using them on a sensor that large. But we have to estimate that if you're using something like that large, you're expecting things to be a little unique, funky, and different anyway. Personally, I don't find it offensive. And because we have the right setup for you, I might actually be able to switch cameras really quickly and show you what a Fujifilm GFX 100 looks like with a 42 millimeter mercury, 72, and 36 mercury. So I think that's a super question. I know we're kind of pressed for time because we like to do these quick, but you caught us at the right moment because we are talking about mirrorless cameras. And so Eric has been gracious enough to pull out the Fujifilm GFX 100. He's making sure the battery is charged, and then we can swap over the picture from the C70 onto the GFX 100 mode. So, Oksana, if you don't mind fielding a few questions and talking with them, I'm going to help them make sure it's prepped up.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Hey guys. Okay, that's cool. Also want to mention for those of you that are in LA area, we have an open house demo tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. to 12:30. Come by, bring your camera, or stop by. We have cameras just to check out the Mercury series or N series. We have Silver Edition to test out. Everyone welcome. Would love to see you. Do we have any questions?
So we have one question from Sounded Out Films. How likely are we to see new speed boosters that are compatible with the Mercury series?
I think I'll have. How about Eric? Eric, you are more knowledgeable with the speed boosters, and come over.
Yeah, speed boosters that would be compatible with Mercury series.
Yeah, we're still testing a lot of.
Yeah, I know there's. I'm not sure. I don't know.
Yeah, we still the Mercury series are pretty new. We're still doing a lot of tests. If you have a speed booster and you'd like to come by and test it, we could do some footage and be able to share it with our other customers who have the same questions. So yeah.
I got another question from Trevor. Are you using any filters on this lens, or is the lens bare? Has a mild proneness, feel looks lovely?
Yeah, great question. This
we are not
no.
Hashtag no filter.
Yeah. Bare.
One of my favorite things about the Mercury lens is the off-axis flare when you have a light source that's out of frame, kind of crossing the frame.
You have a question about that flare?
Yes.
Is that flash a little warm, or is it 5600? Well, it's kind of saturated.
Yeah, no, this is a mag light that the battery is dying on, so we've probably got about 25% battery life on this one. So it's very warm because the battery's more than half dead. But eHall has so kindly handed us a daylight white balanced flashlight here that's about 6500 Kelvin. You can see these beautiful off-axis flares. And this is a much punchier LED ellipsoidal flashlight. You can see that you can really attenuate the way the flare looks like by how oblique the light is and where the light source is in the frame. Very special and unique flare quality. One of our greatest inspirations for flares for the Mercury series come from some of the early French anamorphic lenses. Stuff like Dialyscope, the Brevet Suprematic, very warm and beautifully distinct flares. Those have they have concave front elements, and so that's part of the unique quality of the way the flare works too. It does.
Cool.
So I think today we're going to actually not be able to stream from the Fujifilm GFX 100S because we don't have the right cable on hand. But that was sort of a off the cuff try. I always like to try to jump the BMX bike off the cliff. That's just me. I'm like, go for it. Let's try it.
We can plan it for the next.
But what we can do is plan it for next week, so you have something to look
yeah.
forward to for next Tuesday. So we'll have
Mm-hmm.
the GFX 100 from Fujifilm with our PL mount adapter that's been back focused correctly using a DENS FDC. And you know, to sort of like hone back in on the D-squeeze thing, one of the awesome things, so you know, the small HD has the D-squeeze built in. Monitors like the Atomos have D-squeeze built in. But let's say you're doing something where you don't have a monitor that has D-squeeze and you don't have a camera that has D-squeeze. What could we do? Well, we have a solution for that too, thanks to a company that makes really great converter boxes called Aja. We're using a device today called the Aja ROI. And originally the ROI device was created for projection. So if you're, you know, delivering different projection formats and you know you have a negative that's anamorphic or you know you need to rotate it for a certain case, the Aja ROI box actually has all kinds of scaling, squeezing, de-squeezing, picture rotation. It's a fantastic tool for doing picture adjustment when you're just monitoring without affecting the recorded image. And so that's actually how we're de-squeezing the picture for the Mercury coming out of the Canon C70 today. And then we're looping that out to our local OLED TV that we're looking through. We're looping that out to our small HD that we've got in the background here, and also into the Aja UTAP device that we're using to stream live directly out of the C70 into YouTube Live. So hopefully that sort of ties the whole package together and gives us a big picture about some of the potential tools you can use. And eventually, I'm literally the world's worst at post-production, but one of these days we'll do a post-production stream about how to de-squeeze anamorphic in post, whether you're using something like DaVinci Resolve, Final Cut X, or Pro X, I forget what they call it, and the Adobe Creative Cloud Suite. So we'll get some real experts in post-production since I'm not that guy. But happy to see everybody out there in Instagram Live and YouTube Live, and look forward to showing you Orion series and Mercury series next week on a medium format camera using the Fujifilm GFX 100 family with a PL mount adapter.
Maybe we can ask everyone to send their questions that they have, so we can in advance. If you have any questions, email us.
Brilliant.
Or via Instagram. Let us know what would you like to see on FX.
Yeah, hit us with your questions in advance, and we'll try to address the topics that you want to talk about, because that's what we're all about here at Atlas, is making the world of cinematography part of your hands. So thanks, everybody. Have a great week.
Bye, guys.